Someone last year looked at me and they went, well, if we raise our prices, well, I can't remember the net, let's call it $500, and we lose 10 cases a year, aren't we actually making more money and having more time to serve families? And I was like,
Hmm.
how did it take me 12 years to figure
Yeah.
this out?
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
is, but you've got to watch those trends, right? I mean, if someone is just kicking your butt on the service side and they're $500
Hmm.
cheaper, you may just have to go, well, we're not going to get everything, but something's going to have to give at some point, right? That other company is going to either run out of steam because they're not able to pay people. So it's one person burning themselves out, or
Yeah.
they're going to ultimately raise their prices once they snap up market share. So you do have to pay attention to
Yeah.
those things. But I think
Yeah.
I've realized for sure in the last couple years that raising the prices a little bit isn't going to turn families away as long as you can back it up with the service. Because families will come back and go, hey, it was,
100%.
$1,500 last year. Why has it gone up to 1,700? And you just explain it, especially now in the sort of economic situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
I find it is a little easier to explain.
Yeah, throw inflation right under the bus. Yeah, you blame it all
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
inflation. Gas is going up, everything. So, and it's reasonable. I felt for Omega, we were the same price for like 2 decades. So I was just like this is you're kind of forcing us into this pigeonhole that out of fear you're not changing, but really I think if we had stepped out and just gone straight to 995 or 1095, it would have been completely fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple that I certainly can't speak to the situation at the company that you ran, but I think
Sure.
there are a couple things, especially in family owned businesses, where you kind of go, look, we're here to serve the community. We want to be a reasonably priced option. We've always done it this way. And it's not just price, right? Sometimes it can be about, I don't want to move to an online system. Sometimes it can be about, I don't want to raise
Yeah.
it $400, whatever that thing is. There are so many great things that I love about a family business, but one of the things that's hard is you don't necessarily have a board of directors going, hey, this is what we're seeing in states all across the country. You need to do it
Right.
this way. So you have to really force yourself to dig in and look at, and that's where those relationships come in really helpful is you can pick
Yeah.
up the phone and call your friend who's got a crematory society and go, or cremation society and go, hey, we're struggling with this. Have you guys raised your rates in the last year? And if you have a good enough relationship, you can have honest conversations about that, not in a price colluding way, not in a, I'll go to 1,000, none of that, but mostly like, we're struggling with this thing. We're, a 4-person family or a 3-person family, whatever you are, and sort of outsourcing some of that knowledge and information. And you can go to any business. I also like talking to people who haven't even been in the funeral business and going, hey, how'd you solve this problem at your real estate company? Or, how'd you solve this problem at the school district you work at? Because a lot of the issues at the top levels of administration are just issues in business, right?
So Maggie, I think what you said is kind of amazing, being able to have friends to call. I actually remember meeting your father and a few of his friends at a Cana event outside. They were outside hanging out while the event was going on site. It was him and Kevin Waterston and Jerry Sullivan. And I remember being out there and, they're talking about things that they did and kind of how they grew up in the space together and also things that they're working on. And I just kind of found that kind of inspiring because it's like these juggernauts of cremation kind of like all together sharing. And it's probably not a secret or an accident that they have all grown these massive businesses separately, but kind of similarly and kind of together. And I find that probably why you kind of view competitors in that way, why you're willing to come and talk about stuff on a
Oh
podcast
yeah,
about
absolutely.
deathcare.
And that kind of speaks to the kind of national perspective of it, right? If you're in a larger company, if you're part of FP, if you're part of SCI, you have internal information about, hey, our office in whatever, North Carolina tried this thing and it worked great and we think it could work in Southern California. If you're not, you may not have access to that information unless you have a friend who's in the business. And once a new trend hits an area, your competitor is going to figure it out. They're going to try it, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a new kind of service you offer. So having that communication can really help with innovation, with, keeping creative, with it can be hard. And this business can beat you down. It can be exhausting. There are long hours. It can be really hard to hear about the traumatic ways that people die. There's a lot of things in this business that make it hard. And so having that outlet to go, okay, we want to get a little creative here. We want to try this new thing. We want to see some returns for our employees, not just monetary, but it feels good when you have something go well. It feels good when you pull off a huge service and it, something always goes wrong, but nothing went wrong. So I think that's probably how those guys specifically kind of built and reshaped our industry. And some of them came out of families that had done it for a long time. Some of them didn't. Some of them, created it from the ground up. And I think you'll see, or I hope I should say, you'll see in the next generation similar kinds of things, right? Folks who grew up with the internet, folks who are going, hey, we can take this and we can reshape it for our generation. And I mean, TBD, I guess we'll have to talk again in 20 years, but I think you'll see probably some interesting, independent, creative ways that death care gets reshaped. And you're already seeing a lot of it. There's literally new disposition methods, which I think is really cool and exciting.